face. Our presence at the University System of Maryland, with its mission to serve Marylanders in all of its beautiful and diverse array, could not be more important, and I would say potentially transformative. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about Southern Maryland region, allow a student to offer a few comments, and then close on some of the exciting things we're working on. And finally, of course, with a plea for your ongoing help and support for vision and funding. So as sexy as this building is, Southern Maryland does need have some help. 34% of the Maryland population is below the ALICE level. That's asset limited, income constrained employees. So these are people who are living the check. We have about a 7% poverty rate in various county. A 7% poverty rate in St. Mary's County specifically, where we're located. The poverty rate, particularly for Black and Latino population, is 20%. We have a huge proportion of our population who is financially vulnerable. What's also interesting is that when you look at the median salary in the area, it belies how those people live. We have the highest rate of PhD prepared scientists in the country. They're wealthy. We have this huge disparity in the county down here. What we also know is that the pandemic exacerbated already vulnerable populations. So we can believe that the numbers are actually probably worse. These were rates from 2018, plus I'm looking at So no surprise that those people who are living at these low wage jobs
one of our campuses, which in fact makes the platform much more fluid. The support, in fact, that we have gotten from the state does not fully fund the process that we are doing. We ask each one of our campuses and the community colleges to step up and put resources in as well. There we go. The ArtSys platform is basically a database. It is a database of equivalencies of courses. And think about this for a moment. An English course from Anne Arundel Community College could transfer to any one of our 12 institutions, or a math course from Montgomery College could. When you talk about this database of equivalencies, there are over 500,000 equivalency points in that database. When you start talking about all the courses from the community colleges transferring into our institutions. And that is going to grow, in fact. We have the process of an equivalency is not a magic process. It takes faculty from our institutions sitting down and looking at the content of the course at the community college and the content of the course on their campus to see if indeed they are equivalent. So this is not just a technology issue. This is a personnel issue from an administrative side and a massive faculty investment as well. Now, if I am just going to show you, if you Google ArtSys, it's ARTSYS, this is the screen that will pop up. And I want to tell you that, in fact, the chancellor and I sat down the other day and went through this. It's fun to look at it and look at it. Because there are several different parts to this. A student could go onto ArtSys and ask many different questions. I have a specific course from Community College A, will it transfer fully to receiving college B? Or you can explore transfer pathways, recommended pathways that will tell the student all the courses they should take in that community college that will transfer into the bachelor's pathway in their college of choice. Now, a student, remember we're talking about many students straight out of high school. The challenge is for a student to understand that this exists and that they can utilize this in a very flexible way. Yes. Sure. Well, we'll get to that in just a moment, but in fact, it's a faculty-driven process. So the faculty themselves look at the content and the student learning outcomes of the two courses to determine whether they are equivalent courses or not. One of the things that some states have done for the very basic courses is do what they call common course numbering. So Math 101 at every institution is the same course. We've not gotten there, we're talking about. So you can see a student can explore not only recommending pathways, but they can ask the question, if I am a student looking for a business degree, I am at Howard Community College, what would I need to do to transfer to Towson, to UMBC, to college prep? And you can see the recommended transfer pathway for any one of the transfers that you have. But one of the interesting things, when we had our provost retreat this summer, we talk about the hard work that we have in behind the scenes. But in fact, one of the things that we have been talking about is what we need is real people at the community colleges to help the students explore these pathways. And in fact, Dr. Chancellor, we were talking a little bit about the fact that Towson, in fact, has stepped down to do some of this. But ArtSys itself is a massive database, takes management on a daily basis. The other major part of what we are looking at is the Transfer with Success Act that the Chancellor mentioned. This was in the form of HB 440 and SB 866. You've got to love those numbers. The bill actually passed in 2021, but went into effect in July of 2022. And I will tell you that that bill said several different things, but the major part of this was that in fact, if a student transferred or tried to transfer a course into one of our institutions and the transfer was denied, the credits were denied, We, as our institution, have to respond directly to the student and to the sending institution and explain why we in fact rejected the course transfer. Now think about this for a minute. We just talked about 10,000 students with many, many credits each. This is going to be a lot of communication that needs to happen. But in fact, we do not have these data in hand right now, and they're critical data for us to have. My own thinking here is that we will learn a tremendous amount when we figure out which institutions are denying certain courses. But I think a lot of people will be surprised at the huge number of acceptances that we have that transfer in. One of the challenges that we have is that we have an anecdote here and an anecdote there about a terrible incident that the student had. As the data geek myself, I will tell you that 2 anecdotes does not equal data. And what we need now is data. So in fact, this is an important step for us to put forward. It's going to take a great deal of work to do so. The legislative goals here were about informing the sending institutions about which courses are not transferring, creating a formal communications process with the students directly, and developing a comprehensive list of course denials. When we figure out which ones of the courses are routinely denied, then we can sit down and talk about why they are not equivalent, and in fact, talk about changing course curriculum, in fact, so that they would match much better. I mentioned student learning outcomes. This is not a small change for us. This is going on nationally. We are part of this. Rather than defining a course by the course syllabus, what we are now doing is defining the content of a course by the expected student learning outcomes. That's a change, and there is no standard way to do this. So that in fact, an accounting course at a community college might have 5 expected outcomes. Accounting course that looks very, very similar at one of our institutions might have 11. And now we're trying to make sure that these courses are equivalent. Every one of these decisions is challenged and has to be dealt with. One of the ways that we are doing this is that we have what we call interdisciplinary support groups. We have 12 of these in our system, where we have more than 200 faculty sitting down with each other. So we have English faculty, we have computer science faculty, we have psychology faculty from the community colleges and our 4-year institutions, actually talking about the right kinds of expectations for students in an introductory course or a second level course, so that once again, this pathway from the community college into our upper division schools and programs will be much smoother. But I can't express how much of a challenge this is. This is new to many of us, and our faculty are working very hard to develop those equivalencies. So this is one of our biggest challenges, but we're working hard on this. It is our staff and the academic affairs that, in fact, keeps these disciplinary groups going. And we appreciate the incredible work that our provost and others are doing to naming the right faculty to these groups. Faculty that care deeply not only about the student, but in the collaborative process. Okay. The revised transfer evaluation process is one of our biggest challenges. And in fact, I talked about the legislative goals that we have. The process itself is going to be, I think, much more challenging than the legislators first thought. But in fact, we've been working closely with them, and I think that they are now understanding that this first year is going to be data driven. We need to get the data. So you can see here, and I'm not going to go through this, but in fact, the way the law is written and the new 32-page guidance from MHEC on how to interpret and make the law work has its challenges. And you can see that there is an initial process, the content and the applicability. The denial has to be under a certain time. The receiving institution has an opportunity to appeal, and that sending institution then has the obligation to deal with the receiving institution. As you can see, even under this scenario, it can take up to 16 weeks, that's a semester, to in fact go through this entire process. We know that students are going to lose some time in this back and forth, but once again, if we get this right, if we take our time and do this right, this time next year, we're going to be in a very much better position than we have been in the past. That's a good question. And we have one of the members of my staff spends a great deal of time at all kinds of recruitment fairs, and we work with high school guidance counselors as well as the counselors at community colleges to inform them how to use our system and so on. But we all know that one of the challenges in our K-12 system is that there are not enough counselors to in fact engage students, let alone sit down with them and spend the 20 minutes that the chancellor and I spent exploring ArtSys on a couple of ideas that we have. It's a very rich database. One of my hopes is that our digital native students are going to feel much more comfortable exploring these things online. But in fact, that's a challenge. They have to know to get to the database to ask questions. Regent Pope.
Just a clarification, when a student can transfer from community college over, do they typically require an AA degree with 60 credits to do it, or can they do it after 1 year easily?
Yes.
Or is it more difficult after 1 year, or is it easier after 2 years?
Any time they can transfer, and that's why everything has to be done on a course by course basis, depending on whether they've taken 2 or 5 or whatever. Now, there is in state law and COMA regulations that if a student completes their AA degree, 60 credits of that must transfer as a block. So a student would come into our campus already having 60 credits. The challenge is, are they exactly the right 60 credits for them to take the next 300 level course? And so that's the gap that we are trying to improve upon now. One of the things that the chancellor did not say is that we embrace our transfer students tremendously. If you look at the completion rates of transfer students in our institutions compared to our native first-time students, transfer students do extremely well. Now, one of the reasons that they might do well, and we talked about this in our student fairs and in our academic discussions, is a student who has spent 2 or 3 years getting their 60 credits at a community college may be laser focused on a degree and a job. And they may or may not be doing more exploring. We're still going to have a lot of students who are doing wandering and haven't decided exactly what they want to do. So we have to, in our 160,000 plus students, we'll have all kinds of students there. Yes.
I know. So the legislation required to have some development. Our system is going to become a standard in other countries.
I just checked their challenges.
ArtSys does include schools that are not part of our system. Not every one of the independent colleges has chosen to be a member of ArtSys, but most of them have. For example, the Naval Academy is not ArtSys, but they have a very different perspective than our other institutions. But our private institutions do pay a fee to be a part of ArtSys.
So Denise said that people could.
No, they are using ArtSys. They have depended on us in the past and will continue to depend on us. Regents.
Because of the importance of transfer students in the USM in general, I'm sure there are judgment calls occur. We have an institutional commitment to try to get these students in, as opposed to being through academics. Well, see
Well, one of the things that is a challenge for us in the legislation, when we talk about course equivalencies, there is an arbitrary number of 70%. If 2 courses are 70% equivalent, then we are expected to accept those. That is nuanced. And in fact, one of the things that we will find out, and I'm anxious to find this out, in this data collection, I think we're going to highlight a very few areas where exactly the question that you're asking is going to be highlighted. At that point, we're going to be able to get those faculty together and focus on that and redefine the student learning outcomes, possibly both at the community college and the four-year institution. It's so important that we have that partnership.
Define my comment. So, it's asking a very important question. That in some ways reflects culture. There's no question that nothing should be read into everything we're talking about. I know. Discussing quality. Our degrees need to mean something. So we don't dismiss quality. That said, like many other things, we all need to be brought along. Those of us in higher education, in terms of how we value four-year institutions, what individuals might think of community college education. But I'm happy to say that our faculty, who have to be the drivers, got to be up to the faculty. That's why we have that. They have worked very hard to grow in these affinities, try to get this better. And the other not so scientific comment I'd like on is the fact that when I engage with our counseling of university system faculty, kinds of questions I get are far more in the direction of the way you put it. We need to get this way. We need to fix this. We want to have this. So I think we're moving the way.
I have a comment too, with our recent strategic plan, so student-centric. I can't think of a thing more student-centric. To facilitate this with students, I think some degree the expectation students that generate the community college to be thinking about their natural abilities, these what nature what they want to study. They're probably already in the system when they're finding out that they may have a problem. But part of my house is going to be seems to be a credible thing how to practice it. And I hope that the look is how can we make this happen versus the opposite of that. We can actually go and sit down and process. And lastly, I would say, actually, you said that we're behind in this process. So my sense would be if we do this better than our competitors, does it help our enrollment? It's going to make it easier for the transferability. I'm curious what percent of our enrollment, what percent of the folks coming out of our community colleges are looking to do transfer versus elsewhere, so that we can take a look at this to have a key impact on enrollment.
And the question you asked is a slightly complicated one. The pandemic has changed those proportions, but many of the students going into a community college make a statement at the beginning that they want a four-year degree eventually. Very often life happens when they get into the community college and do not make that last step. But in fact, we want to include this and make this as smooth as possible so it becomes an enticement rather than any kind of barrier to these students. So in talking to our presidents, our provosts, and others, there are many implications for our campuses. These are personnel issues, not only with the faculty, but with the staff who have to be there to meet all of those deadlines on every course that has been denied and do that communication with the student and with the community college. We also need to be able to develop the right kind of data systems on our campuses, because several steps of this should be able to be automated, if you will, until the actual communication has to happen. But in fact, this is going to be a lift for every one of our campuses, and a real challenge, especially for our smaller campuses that are not as richly staffed as some of our others. Wonderful. No. Okay. One of the other challenges that we have We have articulation agreements, campus to specific community college, that defines the pathway for a student. In the USM, we have almost 900 different articulation agreements. Articulation agreements are great. It does not help an individual student. That's where these databases and this equivalency becomes so critical, because that's an individualized thing, not an articulation agreement. However, this new legislation also, and the new regulations also say that in fact, with every new program that comes along, we are going to have to develop at least one articulation agreement even before the program gets through. There are several new reporting requirements that I've actually talked to you about. We also have an annual report due to MHAC and the General Assembly on not only the number of credits that have been denied and all of the reasons, besides that database the first couple of years. We also have to provide new analysis on credit for prior learning other than courses transferring in. So we're all working on that. That's another topic for another day. The other part of this is, in fact, all of these aspects have to be front facing, so that our campus websites as well as the USM website are going to have to be enriched and allowing students to move much more freely in and around these databases. Yeah. Yes, yes. As a student enrolls in a community college, they would be informed about ARCSIS from their own advisors and the people in the admissions office there. One of the other things that's happening, and is one of the steps forward, is not only do we have these articulation systems, but several of our campuses are not only doing articulation agreements and dual enrollment, but dual admission processes. So a student who knows they want to go to a four-year institution for a specific degree can enroll and be admitted to the two-year and the four-year institution at the same time. So they are already on the contract. Yes.
But other powers, community colleges, they are advertising their students. I know that this is so what are you on there?
So, and that's a great question. Well, we are working with our community college partners, and each one of our institutions have primary partners working very closely. But it was very interesting to me that our provost said one of the first things, the resource that we should do, that we need to get behind, is to ask the state to in fact enrich the community colleges and provide specific transfer advisors at every community college, because that will help the students there get to us. And it's that kind of thinking that I think is going to move forward. But one of the challenges is simply resources and personnel in being able to sit down with the student and help them through this entire process. We have several concerns, as I have indicated. I won't go into any more detail about that. The concerns are challenges, and we believe we're up for the challenge. It is going to take more time than some would like, but in fact, our faculty and certainly our admissions, our registrar's offices, and our provosts understand completely this process, and the discussion we had with our presidents earlier this week on this, I think was another start to make sure that the presidents understood that this is a multi-departmental kind of thing. Faculty that need to be dedicated to this, the registrar, the admissions, the counseling, the advising, all of those. So it's an interdisciplinary thing, and that's actually the. Here we go. It is a coordination across all of these units that are required to do this. We are working forward on each one of these issues, and I think we're ahead of where we were last year, and I think we're going to end up where we need to be. And the last slide about statewide goals really reiterates what the chancellor started with. We understand that this is going to be a major lift, but a very important area of focus for us. We are proud of our transfer students. It is a terrific way for a student to get into higher education, define what they want to do, and move on to our institution. We have worked very hard across the state. We have one statewide agreement on AAT, the Associate of Arts in Teaching, that in fact is a defined pathway for students to get into any of our schools of education as a junior. I would also remind you, standing here at RHAC, that in fact, every student at all of our regional centers is a transfer student. So in fact, this is an important area of focus. But we have the opportunity today to talk to you about it. I'm glad I had a couple of questions. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but I would be happy to try and answer other questions and appreciate your traveling through the weeds with me.
So I don't know where. How did you are part of it? Right now. So I think you're
And Chair Gooding, you are emphasizing the importance of the relationship of our institutions with the community colleges, because that really resides at the community college. And I'm going to pick on one of our presidents and ask President Chancellor if she might give an example of a couple of things that Towson is specifically doing. Towson and sitting next to her UMGC are our two highest level transfer institutions. That President Chancellor will make a couple of comments.
Yeah, I'm happy to deal with that. So we recently signed an agreement with CCBC, and as Joe was saying, part of what we're doing is really technology based and being able to work more in concert with each other. We have over 900 articulation agreements. These are pieces of paper that are developed over 20 years that are sitting in offices that when transfers come in, somebody has to evaluate for equivalency. That's 1980, not 2022. And so to be able to have set those assessments done like this, and that students do 3 navigators to be able to see, I think I'm looking at this degree, but if I do this degree, I'm interested in that too. Oh, by the way, I don't have to take these 4 courses, and that's okay. To be able to understand that is really important. So we've signed this we've signed this agreement with CCBC, and we're going to have advisors that are located on their campus. So the students will be able to come to Towson on the campus, be able to talk about the people, be able to make those connections. The other piece is when they come to the campus itself and make that transfer, the average transfer is 45 credits at Towson. So they'll come in with about a semester, with about a year and a semester worth of work at a community college, is to really support their transition to the campus. Because they're going to be in classes with people who have been on campus for a year and a half, understand the library, understand the math center, understand the writing center, understand where to be able to get the support, where the clubs are, things like that. So we have a transfer mentoring program that has hundreds of people involved, and each transfer student is able to connect with either a faculty or a staff member or a student peer advisor to be able to have that support as well. And the outcomes that we've had, our first time on any campus faculty are very supportive. I mean, I think Jay's one of the things that I want to be able to emphasize, faculty are in full support of this. It's just really, really clumsy in how we do it. And to be able to place technology and systemness around it, if I can borrow that phrase from the chancellor, it will make great impact.
I just wanted to say, thank you so much for the presentation. I have more questions. I got going in, the only thing I guess I would ask or encourage or maybe the future is like simultaneously balance like eligibility with these credits, whether it is student center possible. But I can possibly imagine, and I don't want to possibly because but if we have an institution that really thinks they have the best chemistry program, they will guard jealously the reputation of that with best education program in America. Best business program. How do we simultaneously credits to both the system institutions as well as possible, while simultaneously allow them to say, you know what, we want to make sure that all of our students have the highest possible undergoing course that we can do better than anyone else. Because all of them serve students well right now. Possible, serve them well, I think they're as strong as possible. So maybe we can talk about this later. I just want to make sure something is said. Their product.
Michelle has spoke about action and so thank you very much. Other questions or comments? I know it's not a student. And then, when you take a higher level course, it's very difficult for you to do well in it without the understanding that we develop at that introduction, at that station level. So when they transfer, they still have to get a passing grade at the same classes that and so even if it's not the best 101 class that the compensation, they still have the ability to outside of that 400 level class. So I think that still has a lot of value. All right, yeah, Joe, thank you very much. That is, felt like that very enlightening, very helpful for understanding. Now I'll turn it over to yeah, where
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try to be mindful of time. I feel obligated, appropriate in like you honoring the veterans who served our nation, protected our democracy, defended ideals, and as you said, we're meeting just a few days after Election Day, which is the greatest test and privilege of democracy. So I too extend my warmest congratulations to our governor-elect, Wes Moore, and really to all the leaders chosen to serve the people of Maryland. I want to thank Joe for her presentation. I felt strongly that the board and presidents needed to hear an update on this important issue of transfer. And I'm pleased, Madam Chair, that the board is engaged. Smoothing the transfer process is going to take an extraordinary amount of work, resources, the great work of our faculty, staff that are involved in the process. Joe's leadership, as with everything, is indispensable to our progress, so thank you, Joe. I thank our host this morning, USM, our great executive director, Dr. Eileen Abel. As some of you probably think, I love coming to this place. And I think from what I've heard that I have plenty of company in saying that. In speaking about USM, you know that researchers and students are exploring autonomous technologies in this state-of-the-art space. We've got industry leaders, academic leaders, political leaders visiting regularly, tours here. Just last month, the Southern Maryland Navy Alliance dinner was here with U.S. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro. He served as the keynote speaker. Eileen, thank you for making this past year here at USM so special. Good news across the system. Staying with the RX, USM at Hagerstown is in the process with us of searching for a new executive director. Dr. Larry Wheel continues to serve ably as interim leader. And I know there's a big event coming up at USM Hagerstown. It's the annual 2022 Feast and Frolic Scholarship Fundraiser. Larry, I wish you great fun. Shady Grove, in the past month, the 10th annual Montgomery County Business Hall of Fame induction ceremony occurred. This is as well a fundraiser on behalf of students. Over the years, this event has raised about $1.6 million, benefiting 1,100 students. So thank you, Ann. Just yesterday, with Presidents Pines and Gerald, I was a few miles south of US Street in North Bethesda, as Montgomery County Executive Mark Eldridge announced a very important MOU among the county, UMB, College Park, and the University of Maryland Medical System to establish an institute for intelligent and immersive computing, taking the health data that we have and taking the power of computing to improve our collective health. It's a huge undertaking to join research in AI, machine learning, virtual and augmented reality, and apply that knowledge to revolutionize human health and well-being. You're going to be hearing a lot more about this project, but I wanted to bring it up today in the context of US Street, our important entity in Montgomery County, because a key piece of the agreement offers students the opportunity, trade growth students, in hands-on training, internships, fellowships, job placements, system. It's an exciting way to grow our presence in Montgomery County, exploit the proximity that we're blessed with to federal labs, federal agencies, leverage our research across institutions, and, as I said, students. Position our students for leadership in these emerging fields that are loaded with opportunity. Now, the Institute isn't the only big news coming out of College Park. Last month, President Pines announced that the university will make its largest ever single-year commitment to need-based aid for resident students. It's called the Terrapin Commitment. The plan is to invest up to $20 million each year toward closing the gap between the costs of education and a student's aid package, and completely cover tuition and fees for in-state Pell-eligible students. I thank College Park, Provost Rice is here, for their leadership in this. It's a system-wide priority as well. And the commitment from College Park in stepping forward is an inspiration. With money from the NSF, College Park is leading a study to examine how the inherent tension between religion and science influences Black students' pathways in STEM. The university also recently dedicated buildings to two of its trailblazers. Hiram Whittle, the first African-American man admitted to the university, and Elaine Johnson Coates, the first Black woman to graduate. At Towson, Black pioneers were also celebrated. Two of the residence halls were renamed in honor of Marvis Barnes and Myra Harris, who are Towson's first Black graduates. Towson also celebrated its third straight HEED Award, H-E-E-D, for excellence in diversity and inclusion, which is an extraordinary honor. And with twin awards, Towson University is getting national notice for its leadership and economic development. Startup at the Armory, I wish I could show you the acronym, but the TU in startup is in capitals. Towson's Business Engagement Center is what this is, and it was named North America's top economic development initiative by the University Economic Development Association. And just this week in Colorado, APLU announced that Towson won its Innovation and Economic Prosperity designation for its efforts to grow economic engagement and impact. Congratulations, President Jackson. UWalt, riding a wave of international publicity after an important project there, the Innocence Project, led by Defense Attorney Erica Suter, secured the release of Adnan Syed, whose 1999 conviction was the subject of the Serial podcast. And in fact, Mr. Syed's first public appearance following his release from prison was at UWalt, where he detailed the procedural history of this case for the university's Innocence Project students. So UWalt, congratulations on pioneering work in criminal justice and criminal justice reform, which is for a point of emphasis at UWalt. At UMES, and I see Provost Allen here, the institution is seeing its star rise on the national stage. Last week, UMES became the first HBCU in the nation selected for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute's Driving Change initiative. The grant is meant to create culture change at research universities so that all undergraduates, particularly those who historically have been excluded, can excel in STEM. And UMES is using the $2.5 million grant to create an immersive living learning community for students. I need to tell you that HHMI awards are big deals. It's not easy to be awarded this way. So terrific recognition to UMES. I should also point out that UMES is boasting its highest enrollment since 2015. Again, things going very well. UMBC President Valerie Shears Ashley has taken on the spotlight as well. She was named the 2022 Technologist of the Year by Women of Color magazine and graced its cover. In an interview with Times Higher Education, she made the case that research excellence cannot exist without research inclusion. She was one of 3 women profiled by the Baltimore Sun for shattering the glass ceiling and she talked with the Washington Post about building a diverse STEM workforce. And her institution shined brightly. UMBC was the nation's only R1 university to make the top grade in every category measured in modern things, great colleges to work. And those categories, again. Those categories range from, I think, things we can all embrace: well-being, shared governance, mission, pride. That's an endorsement of an institution's culture. So congratulations, Valerie. UMGC continues to expand its reach, its impact, announcing a new transfer alliance with the Des Moines Area Community College, whose 6 campuses educate more than 23,000 students. And in January, taking its education out of this world, UMGC is going to begin offering in-person classes at Patrick Space Force Base in Florida. First contract to teach a Space Force installation. Great growth of the footprint. UMC's spearheading 2 path-breaking projects. $7.5 million grant from NOAA will help UMC's establish a national incubator based on controlling harmful algal blooms. And UMC's researchers have released the first ever study quantifying cropland phosphorus use around the world. This is important work for our environment, and I appreciate on everybody's behalf this work by UMC's. Coppin State, leading efforts to fill Maryland's nursing and teacher shortages and bring more diversity to those fields. An MHEC grant is going to help Coppin modernize nursing preparation by introducing new online learning tools to put more Coppin-trained nurses on the path to licensure. And a $4.1 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education supports Coppin's Pathways to Professions program, designed to bolster our teacher corps, which we're all very conscious of, boost student success in high-need urban and rural schools across Maryland. Thank you, President Jenkins. Moving on to Frostburg, I was fortunate enough to have 2 very enjoyable business campus twice in the space of a couple of weeks. First, I went out to meet with FSU's College of Education leaders together with school superintendents from about 6 districts across 3 states in the proximity of FSU. The idea was to have a dialogue about programs and partnerships those high schools in Frostburg are building to tackle the teacher shortage again across the entire region and develop a diverse educator corps. And then I joined President Washik, Governor Hogan, and federal leaders several weeks later for the announcement of the Appalachian Regional Commission grants, which included significant funding to improve broadband access in Western Maryland. Frostburg is stimulating a lot of activities that grow the economy in Western Maryland, and it's very exciting to see those things happen. I joined UMB at Spio Park as that institution broke ground on its newest building for MLK. It's an 8-story tower that's going to come up on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, a major entrance to the city of Baltimore. There's a lot of power in what that building is going to represent. It's going to offer critical wet lab space in the city that is hampering economic growth. Biopark also celebrated its opening of the BD Innovation Center which gives students and researchers access to new lab space and advanced diagnostic tools. Dr. Cheryl, congratulations on everything you're doing for Baltimore. UMB has also won significant grants, $7.5 million from NIH, awarded to the Institute of Human Virology to help control cancer among people living with HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa, where UMB has decades of deep experience containing and treating disease. And with a $14 million NIH grant, UMB is joining with UMBC on a project to better recruit and train junior faculty underrepresented in biomedical sciences. Salisbury, a $2.6 million grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to allow students in FU's fraud and forensic accounting program to work alongside the state's attorney's office to fight elder financial fraud and high-tech fraud, only program of its kind in the nation. And the Princeton Review ranked Salisbury University among the nation's top 50 colleges. Salisbury was the highest ranked of 4 USM schools, so 4 of our institutions deserve a hurrah. Towson, UMBC, College Park, led by Salisbury in committing to the environment. Bowie State, so many new partnerships announced in recent weeks. A partnership with IBM to diversify the cyber workforce, partnership with Adobe to fuel innovation and grow opportunity for underrepresented students, a $2 million grant from the Blackstone Charitable Foundation to expand student entrepreneurship, and a grant from the State Board of Education to help para-educators and aides from Anne Arundel County Public Schools pursue teaching degrees at Bowie. Already, the number of students enrolled in an undergrad education program at BSU has climbed nearly 50% since 2018, working to filling those critical classroom shortages. Congrats, Anita. One final observation. At our September meeting, I took a few minutes to celebrate the excellence of our USM universities as reflected in the national rankings. Today, I want to make the point that our excellence is not out of reach for a student. Our excellence is affordable. The College Board's new trends in college pricing breaks down the cost of attendance state by state. For in-state students attending a Maryland public university, average tuition and fees comes to $10,560. In terms of price, that puts Maryland right in the middle, 25th among all 50 states. It's good to be lower. And for example, far better than our neighbors. Pennsylvania, 4th most expensive. Virginia, 8th most expensive. Delaware, 11th most expensive. We are a good deal, and we offer high quality education. There's more. Half of all USM undergraduates complete their degree without any tuition debt whatsoever. That's because we put a premium on financial aid. Together, our universities awarded $180 million last year, 45,000 students with financial need. In less than a decade, the amount of university money distributed annually has grown by 50%, as has the number of students receiving it. Not an accident, a trend line by design. We've committed to growing need-based aid so that lower income students are held harmless by tuition increases. And you can tell my pride with your work. Our affordability is the work of all of you in this room. And of course, to our partners in Annapolis. We need to be very proud of this. Together, we pledge to keep a USM education affordable for Maryland students and their families. It's a pledge we kept. And as I said, that makes me very proud. I am now going to cede the podium to Regent Wood, who is with Regent Berg, leading a system-wide effort on prison education. He has a very brief update to deliver following his September report. Before he does, I want to note that last month, Regent Wood and I joined President Schmoke, together with his faculty and staff, at a reception at Hidden Waters, honoring U-Ball's Second Chance College Program, which provides a degree pathway to inmates at Jessup and continues post-release. It was frankly this program, as I learned more about it, that stimulated my interest in doing more in prison education, doing more to replicate and scale U-Ball's extraordinary success. And in fact, Bowie State, UMES have now joined the federal Second Chance program, which is terrific. At that reception, it's good to get out. I met several students enrolled in the program, former prisoners. And I met his first ever graduate, James Ruffin. He inspired me. He inspired all of us. And it's in keeping with our mission to serve the public good. So we'll hear more now from Regent Wood. Thank you very much.
Well, it's good to be in California. And I will be brief. Program at the last full board meeting, we indicated that we would report back on our progress at this meeting. Since then, we have had several conversations with Secretary of Public Safety, Robert Green, Assistant Secretary for Programs, Treatment, and Reentry, Carolyn Scruggs, and Public Safety Director of Education, Daniel Cox. Regent Herb will bring us up to date on those conversations.
Well, thank you. I can update the board that over the course of our several conversations with Secretary Green's leadership, they have expressed real excitement about the idea. In particular, Secretary Green has a real passion for this. He's clearly very sophisticated, thoughtful about it. I am hopeful that if Secretary Green continues in his current position, he will continue to carry that enthusiasm and passion forward. Also hopeful that his successor, someone else in that seat, will also share the commitment that the next layer down of leadership, yes, has shown. They have resolved some important issues that would be critical to making this effort go forward, including technological issues. They have resolved primarily the issue of how to make technology through tablet computers available to inmates in a safe, responsible way that gets content to them, but that doesn't allow for other improper or inappropriate or unsafe contacts with folks outside the facility walls. They have gotten a taste of what is possible through these programs, running involved, and they're very, very eager to scale up. And they know what's possible, and there continues to be real demand for these types of curricular offerings. They know this because not only does it help improve outcomes for once folks complete their sentences and they return to their communities, but it also, Secretary Green is particularly passionate about this, said it improves safety order within detention centers too. So they are tremendously excited, and I think we have the potential to be a national model here, which is the vision that and invoked in prior months.
Thank you very much, Regent Burke. We are so honored to have you back, particularly as your involvement as a former United States Attorney for the state of Maryland. We've also been assisted in this effort by Regent Hugh Preston, who introduced us to Bill Gertner, a former inmate who has achieved great milestones as executive director of the gatekeepers that we discussed at the last board meeting. We also have, thanks to you, a compelling video of their transformational impact. So I want to thank you for helping us. Our initial contacts also confirmed that prison education does in fact lead to real jobs, and the recidivism rate is dramatically reduced amongst the population of participating inmates, thereby making our communities safe. What could be more important than that? And as mentioned by Chancellor Furman, we also met at Hidden Waters with Chancellor, President Schmoke, UBALT Professor Andrea Pandora, and participants in UBALT's Second Chance College program. And for that, we thank you, Jay, Bert, and Greg. Present at that meeting were several other former who were UBALT students while in prison and have since become extraordinarily successful and responsible members of the community. In particular, Thomas Anderson, who was sentenced to life in prison for spousal abuse, found his way in prison with the help of the extraordinary program at UBALT, and he was given an early release by a court after serving 20+ years. And he has since become a leader in many facets of prison education and a highly respected advocate. On October 31st, Regent Her and I also attended a meeting organized by Senior Vice Chancellor Bill Bogman to assess the views of system faculty and other interested persons. The feedback at this meeting was extraordinary. So, Joe, thank you. We also learned that the Maryland Department of Labor has an active program in coordination with some of our community colleges to teach the trade in Maryland prison. The inmates not ready for or not quite interested in higher education. This includes plumbing, electrical, automotive, those types of trades, and that program is active. So Regent Her and I are pretty pleased to report on this progress, and we thank you for the.
Thank you. Any questions? Start.
Chancellor, thank you so much. I'm here to give you an update on staff. We spent our October visit in Frostburg. We're welcome and no snow as promised, which was very nice. So it was lovely, and there was a lot of energy. Really a testament to how step away from Zoom. So we're really excited for. Thank you for your support. We are making progress with recruiting staff awards. So this has been actively recruiting that process. We're going to do some really great. We do have the joint councils meeting on November 16th next week. At that meeting, we will hear from issues. With staff and students. One of those is training for ethics today, which is February 1st. Person, or at least some hybrid for feedback. We want to have a discussion about the bargaining policies. Also a discussion on mental health, the faculty, staff, and students, a significant issue going on right now. And then a discussion on the USM minimum. So, talking a bit more of that we would for and something to us. And the faculty and students also come excited to talk more about that. So, I have included in the documents for you today, both the plan for us, so you can see some of the other areas that we're working on, as well as the council's schedule for that day. So that's important. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Our next report.
Good morning, everyone. I also want to add my appreciation for the hospitality here, especially for the warm welcome we received last evening and the wonderful dessert buffet. So that's how I want to begin my remarks. Thank you, Dr. Ivan Abel, for all that you're doing in our partnership with Bowie State University and each one of our institutions. CUS continues to meet monthly and met on October 3rd and November 7th. At our October 3rd meeting, we were very pleased to welcome back our esteemed former colleague, Dr. Freeman Grabowski, who's now serving as an ACE annual fellow. He was joined by Mushtaq Unja, Executive Director of the Carnegie Classification System. And during that meeting, we had a robust discussion about the efforts underway to evaluate classifications, both the universal and the elective classifications for Carnegie. That frames our classifications for our institutions. Chancellor Furman also provided an update on the cost of living adjustment when meeting. Senior Vice Chancellor Goffman, as she mentioned earlier, also has briefed and had a robust discussion with regard to the Transfer with Success Act that we just present on. So I'm not going to go back over any more details there, but I know that we had a very good discussion and we'll continue working towards a more effective and successful program for our community colleges as well as our institutions. Vice Chancellor Hogan also provided a government affairs update during the November 7th meeting and a preview of the upcoming legislative session. That now concludes. Are there any questions? Thank you, President. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning, everyone. How are y'all doing? First off, I want to thank Dr. Abel for hosting us yesterday as well. So, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Herman, thank you all for inviting the USMSC here again. Over the past 2 months, the USMSC has been working on a range of issues, as we mentioned at the last September meeting. At the last meeting, the USMSD also showed interest in initiating a Board of Regents Student Award for the first time. So since then, the executive team and I have been able to put together a packet that includes the information such as the purpose of the award categories, the application process, and the application itself. So we'll be sending out that packet to the Chancellor for him to review, and then December CUS meeting, The assistant presidents, chancellor as well, and our guests will have a chance to review and discuss any changes. So our timeline for that award, a rough timeline is that we'll send out the applications in mid-December for the students to apply. Our application will be due on the 31st of January. And so we'll have about a month, so from February 1st to about March 9th or so is when we'll review the applications. And at the March 14th meeting, the Board of Regents Committee on Education Policy and Student Life meeting, we'll introduce those names, so that the Board of Regents can have a chance to review those names. And at the April 14th Board of Regents meeting, they'll have a chance to approve those names, and at the May USM meeting, those awardees will be invited, and at the June 16th meeting, Board of Regents meeting, will be a breakfast and a presentation by the Board of Regents. So that's our rough timeline, and it's very will change, but this is what we have planned so far. It's also the time of the year where we're going to be nominating a few candidates for the student regent position. So at this month's USMSD meeting, which will be held at Salisbury University this Sunday, one of the items in the agenda will be to review and finalize the questions you would like to ask the candidates at the December USMSD meeting. And that will be held at the University of Maryland College Park. The USMSD has also been working pretty actively with other student council and other student governments across the country, especially over these past 2 months. And one of the main issues that we had to work on was the cancellation of student debt application. So before it's released, the coalition had provided some feedback and suggestions to incorporate in terms of messaging and the application itself. And we were happy to see that many of our recommendations were accepted. So for an example, we had asked the application to be as short as possible, and we were happy to see that the application does not take more than 1 minute to complete. So we were really happy to see that. Next week, as the Council for University System staff had mentioned, we're going to be having our joint council meeting next week. That's a little meeting with CUSP as well as CUSP. And we're really looking forward to this meeting. And I know the Chancellor himself will also be attending, as well as some Board of Regents members. So these, we share a lot of common issues with other councils, so it'd be a great chance for our members to brainstorm some ideas and things that we let them work on. So with that, I'll turn it over for any questions. Thank you so much.
Now we have
Good morning, Chair Gooden, members of the Board of Regents, and Chancellor Kerman, and the university presidents. I am Heather Haberback, and I serve on CUSIP as the vice chair, and I am here because Dr. Brewer had another professional commitment. I started as a Maryland teacher, and I have taught in Maryland as well as other states and countries. And in 2003, I went to College Park and was able to combine my love of psychology as well as teaching to get a PhD in human development and educational psychology. And I study motivation, the motivational effects and self-efficacy beliefs of teachers in hopes that that will prolong people staying in the profession. I started at Towson in 2007, and I am currently the department chair for second and middle school education. So you have a report in your materials, and I'm just going to highlight a few things. Our last meeting was in October with CUSIP, and we will be meeting again in November. We're very excited about the tri-council meeting. We passed the election day resolution unanimously that you can also find in your documents. And we are focusing mostly on procedural issues right now and rules on which we've currently been working and trying to iron out some of those things. We are also focusing on revisions to our bylaws, and as a result, action items have yet to be developed or approved within the council. Committees have been meeting and considering action items that they are interested in taking on. And while some issues have been discussed, as stated in the report, no action items have been approved for discussion or further development yet. So we're busy trying to move things forward and iron out our bylaws and other procedural issues. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received no requests for public comment in this meeting. Thank you. Comments? The next order of business. Regarding which items. Consent agenda as were made by Z and the committee chairs. However, any region they request that an item be excluded from the consent agenda for separate and full discussion. Before I move approval of the consent agenda, I ask if there are any items that any region like move from the consent for separate and full discussion. Seeing none, I move approval of all the items tonight in consent. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Now, we have two items that stay on finance. Region admin will present the items, which are an enrollment update and an action item regarding the use of the building here in this facility. Gary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here in Southern Maryland, beautiful facility and this lot's got a great future ahead. We're looking forward to that. First item I'd like to discuss and bring everyone's attention relates to the fall 2022 enrollment update and the FY 2023 estimate. This annual preliminary enrollment and FTE report our special report for the institution, where our institution provide enrollment number for the fall semester. Enrollment is very important to the finance committee because it relates to, first of all, getting our wonderful students in the school, but also a revenue line item. So this is why we focus on it very much in the finance committee. In your material, you will find the annual preliminary fall enrollment numbers. This is our first look at the enrollment following the beginning of the fall term. Campuses provide this preliminary estimate following the registration changes, such as students dropping and adding courses. Now, the final enrollment will be concluded shortly, but this preliminary report tracks very well with the final fall numbers. So we have here our expert, Chad Muntz, who I'll ask in a minute to summarize these findings and provide some contextual information based on nationally available data. And Chad leads the Systems Institutional Research Data and Analytics Office. So welcome, Chad. But before we begin this presentation, I would ask Regent Fish, Chair of the Board's Enrollment Work Group, to make a few comments on the continuing work of the group. I believe she is available on Zoom. Is that correct? Okay, so Regent Fish.
I am.
Anything?
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. By way of background, Chair Gooden established the enrollment work group.
Sorry, Regent Fish. They actually can't hear you. Hang on just a second. Let me take it up to the mic.
Not yet.
Sorry, stand by for 1 minute.
Ask her to speak again.
Regent Fish, could you
All right,
speak?
can you all hear me? Can you all hear me now?
Not
All
yet.
right, well, looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Fortunately, comments, so we'll tell you
Try this.
what she said, and this is Richard Fisher would like to remind everyone that the Finance Committee reviews the.
Could you try again,
numbers,
Regent Fish?
purpose, is,
Can you hear me now?
a little better. Can you speak up a little more?
I can. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better. Yes. Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Regent Atman. By way of background, Chair Gooden established the enrollment work group to look at enrollment plans and data. And in the beginning, our focus clearly was on the pandemic. Over the past year, we have heard about enrollment plans and adjustments our institutions are making to meet our enrollment goals. While it's disappointing that enrollment is lower, there is a bright spot. The first time full-time enrollment increased for the second year in a row. And I'm going to turn it over to Chad Muntz now, who will go through the reports in more detail. And thank you, Chad, and thank you, Gary.
You're welcome. Chad, the floor is yours.
You got it.
Just 1 second. I have a PowerPoint. You know me. So
Two.
we'll pull that up. And here it is. Good morning. I'm Chad Muntz, and I'm with the System Office of Assistant Vice Chancellor for Institutional Research, Data, and Analytics. And I'm pleased to bring to you this fall 2022 enrollment update. Before I begin, I just want to thank a couple of my colleagues back at the office. Without their help and support, we wouldn't be able to look at the analytical trends and identify what's happening nationally. Those two people are Laura Walker and Kurt Dahl. And again, I just want to thank them. I'm sure they're listening at this time. And their hard work is good. So moving forward, just to give a little background of this update, it's responsive to board policy enrollment 3-4.10. And what this does is I'm going to show the cycle. If we start at the bottom of this circle, this is the enrollment projection process. So in our policy, it states that each campus will create an enrollment plan that spans 10 years that directs the institution as which students they from the markets that they're serving, as well as what the intention of the overall enrollment in their cycle. Moving forward, once that plan is approved by the Board of Regents, which will come here in around April, we will then make decisions on tuition fees. Both of those two things combined together, as well as support from the state appropriations, will inform our budget. So these numbers are critical to understand the revenue as Matt said, as well as what we expect to see with these state. In addition, in the summertime, we will be approving capital budgets, looking at the right side. The enrollment numbers, the FTEs, full-time building impacts, the overall facility size, which is the discussion of load. Next, according to policy, which is on here today, it says that in the fall, the campuses are given in your report, you will see both projection and with our action. These numbers then become the official numbers that we move forward and our debt issuance when we look at that. So they look at not only what the Regents are looking at, the approval, the plan process. So with that background, we have some great news here and some next news. First, we're on the 4th year of enrollment. So we did our item. But this fall, there the inline numbers that we first and the possible reports of the first time full time is that our enrollment is going down. This is the smallest decline in about 3 years. So just to put it in perspective, when we were building that home in the last fall, we thought we would be around 1,000. This fall we're at 162,200. So it wasn't negative. And we saw that this time students. And as I've mentioned, it's the 2nd year of this type of students, 14,773. Most of that growth is typically often giving us working with those projects for the excellent stories, the recruitment, retention efforts that add to those increases. So that's the headcount side of things. On the full-time equivalent, what we do is we look at the overall course taking behavior of every single student, both a full-time and part-time student, and we determine what's the overall full-time number of students at everybody. Say 15 credits. Overall, the projection, we're getting 600 FTE of the project. So that was improvement and reflected well in the budget process in the summer, and our estimate for this year is tracking very close to where we are last year. So essentially, our professional workload is about the same as last year. So even with fewer students that are taking more. All right. So first, I have 4 graphs here, and we'll back it up and look at the trend. And what you see here is over the last 13 years, the top line is our total enrollment. The middle line is our undergraduate enrollment. And the bottom line is our graduate enrollment. So starting with the bottom line, the graduate enrollment has been relatively stable, slightly decreasing. Most of that decrease has been with part-time undergraduate students. I'm sorry, part-time graduate students. However, we have seen positive increases in the full-time graduate numbers, including UMBC, College Park, Towson, Prosper, Powell this year. So again, full-time students take more credits and are better overall for our numbers. They're retaining longer. Now, looking at the undergraduate, which is the middle line, you can see it mirrors the top line, which makes sense since most of our enrollment is undergraduate, and it's also the part of the enrollment that's been experiencing bigger decreases, bigger increases, so it's influencing our overall numbers. Now, behind this number, I mentioned we're at 163,200 students this year. Even though we're on the 4th year of decline, it means that we have been here before. So we can look at 2015, 2016, and see what was going right, and identify if those conditions are the same moving forward. Some brief analysis looking at last year and looking at the total new student input, we're seeing the same numbers of new student input moving forward. The second thing I want to highlight is we, even in the pandemic with fewer new students, we are also graduating more students than we ever have before. This is a positive outcome, but it also explains some of the enrollment decline. So we've committed to over 28,000 new bachelor degree recipients 2 years in a row. We're hitting our impact numbers for the state's goal for 55% completion. And these are all positive outcomes within the numbers as well as the first time student. So I have 3 slides here that look very similar. It's by the campus and it's looking at the last 4 years of data. The red bar is 2019. The gray bar is 2022. So me looking at this and understanding what's happening in our total enrollment, I just mentioned that we had new student changes and we've had high numbers of graduates. We can then see how it's impacting the overall undergraduate enrollment. So when I look at this, I try and see if the gray bar is improving, which is the most recent year, and if it's approaching 2019. If it is, it seems like the institution is on track and recovering. And most importantly, if it's better than last year or better than 2020, then that indicates the future is more enrollment and moving forward. Now, underlying the total enrollment, I wanted to highlight our first-time full-time students. So in the same way, this graph follows the same format where each cluster is the institutional new student enrollment. And you can see that what happens is as large numbers of students come in, they're retained, especially with the first-time full-time students, on average 4.5 years within a 6-year period. So we really like looking at the first-time full-time students to understand what our future enrollment will be. More freshmen now means more sophomores, more juniors in 2 years, more seniors in 3 years. In fact, about half of our undergraduate population starts as first-time students. The other half, which we talked about earlier today, starts with new transfer. So, but new transfer students already have credits, so they stay fewer number of years. So this first time full-time numbers, understanding the undergraduate enrollment as well at each campus. And then finally, the same trend is true with the full-time equivalent, which is this FTE graph. And we're not seeing quite this sharp of a decline at some of our institutions, because as I mentioned, the credit taking behavior, especially with more full-time graduates, has increased. But again, it makes sense that if we had a couple of years of fewer new students than we're expecting, and a high number of graduates, students graduating, then we would expect declines in enrollment temporarily. I'd like to shift now into just some overall national context and how USM is comparing. First, we're seeing a re-engagement of the K-12 participation in higher education. This is the dual enrollment. And this is important. We know that the K-12 population is essential for higher education in general. Encouraging them to take classes early sets them on the expectation that they will finish a degree and pursue higher education. In fact, when we look at our transfer students, most of them start their first college experience within a couple of years of graduating high school. So if they delay for many years and come back to us as a working adult, or they transfer seamlessly from community college through our articulation programs, almost all of the students who begin higher education are beginning within a couple of years of high school graduation. So we want to increase K-12 participation across the board. We're seeing that happening. We're also seeing some of our community colleges are having more freshman students. This is important to us. We've seen a decline in Maryland Community College transfers over the last couple of years, and this is because they've also experienced the same first-time student decreases. Going forward, we're hopeful that we'll see more Maryland Community College transfers in the next couple of years. Undergraduate enrollment increase across all HBCUs across the nation. That is true of our institutions. In fact, another excellent data point is the total enrollment at our 3 HBCUs increased for the first time in many years. We're seeing positive retention and new student increases at all 3 institutions as we're working on their enrollment. And finally, this is not uncommon if you've heard me over the last few years talking about trends. The highly selected institutions are always the first to recover. We're following that same trend as well. And it's outlined that the regional campuses, which tend to serve more first-time, first-generational students, are the ones that are having the hardest time recovering. And our institutions are doing some of those same challenges as well. Now, behind those numbers are some things to think about or to look at as we try to understand what's happening. Are we closer to fall 21 or fall 22 when we move forward? And one of the things that we saw in the trend was that our female enrollment losses are greater than male across higher ed. And the reason why this is significant is because students are disproportionately female when they participate in higher education. So this is a trend to see or watch to see if this is a trend or just a one-year occurrence, or is it indicating that we're increasing male participation in higher education? Similar to the other demographic trend, we know that the white population is decreasing. Traditionally, they have participated in higher education at a greater rate. They led the enrollment decline across the nation. So it's another area to look at, but it's been one we've been preparing for, of looking at serving new populations and reaching out to especially like our Hispanic community and other communities that have lower participation. One note that we saw within the National Student Clearinghouse report was that the participation with our primarily online institutions across the nation increased with the 18 to 20-year-olds. Now, the 18 to 20-year-olds are the ones who are more traditionally likely to enroll at our residential campuses. Now, we don't know what's behind this. We'll have to take another year or two of data to understand what's happening. Is this an impact of the pandemic as people are more comfortable with attending in person, or a result of having done face-to-face education for a couple of years in high school? Something to watch and to look at. Unemployment remains low. The reason why this matters, especially at our community colleges, when we have higher unemployment, our open access community colleges and those type of institutions increase enrollment. that leads to more transfers later. Again, it's still, the economy is still strong, but it's something to look at moving forward that can change. And then finally, as I mentioned, is this closer to 21, where we saw bigger percentage increase, or will next year be closer to this year where it's a moderate increase? So we're still things to watch of how we're recovering. Overall, as I mentioned, the summary, the decrease wasn't as much as last year. We have green shoots of hope to look at as we have more first-time, full-time students across the system. In fact, the highest number of first-time, full-time students was 2018. We were within 100 students in 2018. So that is a positive news moving forward. But with all of the enrollment plans that we looked at, it takes consistent new student as well as retention. And retention has remained strong, as you evidenced by high graduation rates. So as we move forward, increases in retention as well as new students will be helpful in achieving that number. And I just have to say, I say this every year, but recovery is slower than the losses. It's easy to lose students in 1 year, but we don't recover the same number of students in next year. If students don't participate in 1 year, they don't magically become sophomores in another year. So our plans, the ones that have worked best, have been slow, intentional increases over time, overcome the enrollment losses. And so that's what we're seeing moving forward. So that's the overview of fall 2022. Regent Admin or Chair Goodman,
Yes, two good questions. One, how are we comparing other systems in terms of enrollment decreases? First question. Second question is, are we seeing decreases in STEM fields at the same rate as overall?
So good question. Overall, as I mentioned, the numbers that we see so far at the high level were mirroring the national trends. You know, the same institutions are increasing, the same institutions are decreasing in the same type of institutions. So as I mentioned, College Park, UBC, the top tier institutions, the highly selective institutions are the ones seeing growth and didn't have the same impact. Our HBCUs are seeing growth nationally. And we are also seeing the same thing. The regional institutions are the ones that are the most, and has been written about, that that's the most challenging area to grow. But we're hearing great stories of reaching out, changing the market, trying to expand the market for new students. Historically, that's been where the first generation students go. First generation students are now more likely to be in urban areas. So, you know, obviously regional campuses are not always in those settings. So that's behind the numbers. As far as STEM, we don't have the recent numbers, but last year's numbers did not seem to drop off. That still seems to be one of our key areas of enrollment, and we're meeting our STEM degree numbers moving forward. So I don't really have anything to indicate otherwise on STEM at this time. If that does change, sure.
Any other questions?
Is there a mechanism in place at the different universities to try to understand the reasons that students are dropping out of the back end? It obviously makes a big difference if it's because they're graduating faster, COVID, less interested in the degree. Any system or effort.
So I know we have many of our presidents here. I don't want to, if many of them have a comment on that. I can say that the stories are different. That goes on. I see President Schatzel. That's the hand.
I think I speak for all the presidents that we do analysis of this every year to be able to take a look at it. For House itself, we're back up to pandemic levels for the first year class coming in, but we're about 3 percentage points. We were about 3 percentage points behind on retention itself. So that was an impact despite using financial aid and various other strategies to be able to get people back. And then we had a higher graduation rate. We're graduating quicker. They were like, done. I don't want to take that second major. I just want to be able to out. So to your question, there's extensive analysis done because we have to develop strategies in order to address the various. I think all my colleagues that exactly.
Same here. We have a task force, a retention task force that does an analysis to survey for students to look for trends on the campus. The number one impediment to progression for our students is financial. They have struggled financially. About 39% of our students are first-generation students. During the pandemic, many were stopping out to work 2 and 3 jobs, driving farm trucks, and that's a serious example. That's a real example. Some were trying to balance doing that type of work while they were in school, and it just didn't work out. So financial is the #1 obstacle for our students.
Sharon, thank you for an excellent presentation, all really informative. I'm curious, do we do summer tracking for enrollment trends for our regional campuses? I'm interested in the differences when we compare the regional campuses and their enrollment challenges with our traditional.
Sure, so I will say in the report, we do have 10 years worth of data. I had a part-time undergrad, grad, that's there. Online, we have some resources for trends that we can do deeper if that's available. At the campus level, I know that they compare to what's happening regionally with the peers or other kinds of competitors in the market to understand what's happening. But I will say some of the excellent work that we've heard is just with the returning students, is reaching them sooner, registering them sooner, and having them commit to that next semester, not wait, not having a gap. It's been some of that. So it's a little bit of everything. We're experiencing the same trends nationally as well as implementing best practices. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good. One thing that I heard, the enrollment numbers are high, the graduation rate is increasing. And I'm wondering if that would be linked in any way to admission study.
I do not know necessarily, but I remember President Schatzer just mentioned that the time to degree is decreasing. This has happened at a number of our campuses. When time to degree increases and graduation rate increases, there ends up being a rebalancing of how many new students are required to come in to keep enrollment the same. So I don't know about admission standards specifically in this report. I don't know if others are seeing that, but I can say that overall, at all of our institutions, we're seeing improvement. So, whatever is happening, student success, I see.
When I think about this, and forgive me if I'm oversimplifying, but listening to the president's data, I think what we're seeing now in only 1 year is that the so-called traditional student is coming back. Our freshman numbers are increasing. Now, that's this year. We hope it's a trend. That's on the one hand. But we have to fill in the trough that occurred during the pandemic. When students dropped out, and for first-year students to fill that trough, it's going to take a little while. And then beyond that, as President Schatzer pointed out, students are graduating at a faster rate. So the outflow is ahead of the inflow at this point, but the inflow is getting better. We'll see what happens over the next few years.
Also, it's what transfer improved. Yeah.
So one of the part of that you mentioned in your report is high school graduation declining. How many years are you looking at that? Is that going to remain the trend, or is that small?
So the numbers of high school graduates are declining nationally. Not in Maryland. Maryland, we're still in the high 60s, low 70s. We bring in 14,000. The community colleges and the other Maryland institutions take up about half of that market. We have about a fourth leaving the state, and then a fourth don't go in. So theoretically, if we had 100% participation, we would need to do a lot more capital building, a lot more. There'd be a lot more happening. So we still have a lot of students who need to.
Any other questions, comments? All right, well, this was for information only, and looks like obviously there are challenges, but many good trends. I think it is remarkable that we're educating, think about it, 160,000 young and mature individuals each year. So tremendous number of students. Thank you. Chat. All right, the next item is an action item. This is an exciting item. The Chancellor and others are incredibly pleased to see this moving forward. University System of Maryland, Southern Maryland, is seeking approval to lease Building 1, that's, we're in Building 3 right now, it's 2 buildings at a to the Kennedy Krieger Institute. We have dignitaries from Kennedy Krieger here today. We'll introduce them in a minute and welcome them. As many of you know, Kennedy Krieger is a world-class nonprofit organization located in Baltimore that supports the developmental needs of children with severe neurological or rehabilitative conditions through day and outpatient programs, research, and education. And I can say I've had relatives of mine, many friends who have taken advantage of Kennedy Krieger. It is truly an incredible organization. The addition of this location in Southern Maryland at Building 1 will help countless families. We have no question about that. And what Kennedy Krieger will bring to these children of Southern Maryland is worthy of the resources of the USM. The missions of the USM and Kennedy Krieger are consistent with each other. And there will be great opportunities for training and collaborative offerings. Turning now as the Finance Committee to a few details of the transaction, of course. The term of the lease is 15 years with 2 5-year renewal options. As you can see, in the fiscal impact section, the lease cost is $14 per assignable square foot, which represents the fair market value for the region and for the nonprofit agency. And we always check to make sure that the market complies with the lease amount charged. Kennedy Krieger will be responsible for the capital improvements to the building to facilitate its use. They will also be responsible for utilities, information technology, and phone service. But we will be responsible, the USM Southern Maryland will be responsible for the roof replacement, which will cost us $500,000. And we will provide security and janitorial services as part of the lease. The initial 15-year lease agreement will generate $3.6 million in revenue. I'll make a motion that we approve this. Is there a second? Okay. Any questions, comments? There's been a motion, a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Kennedy Krieger. Close my report.
Thanks, Gary, for your report, and thanks, Chad, for that report. The motion for the lease of Building 1 to Kennedy Krieger's lease. Thank you to everyone on the board. Now, I must admit that we anticipated that this lease would be approved. And so we have several leaders from Kennedy Krieger with us this morning to share what this agreement means for their organization and for ours. It advances a very special relationship and provides some much needed service to the region. To expand on that a little further, I asked Chancellor Herman to say a few words and also to introduce all of our guests.
Well, Chair Gooden, I'm glad you said what you said, because I could look very bad here, predicting the actions of the board. So, thank you to the board. It's true. We're collectively so excited about this lease. And yes, anticipating your approval of it, that we invited some very important people to be with us this morning. I want to first extend my gratitude to Kennedy Krieger Board Chair, Dr. Nancy Grasmick, who needs no introduction in venues like this, to President and CEO, Dr. Brad Schlager, and to their colleagues who joined us today, Dr. Linda Myers, Dr. Eric Parsons, and Principal Amy Myers. And I want to thank Senator Jack Bailey, who was moved to champion funding for this expansion, knowing that a campus in Southern Maryland means Kennedy Krieger can serve more young people from this region and serve them in a place close to home, close to family, close to community. See, that's a parallel already with us. That's what we're doing as a system. Bring it to the people. And our excitement about this lease stems from the fact that all of us consider it so much more than a lease. And let me explain that to you. To me, and this is why I got very excited about it, when we started talking with Chair Grasmick, it's the perfect marriage of missions. Because what Kennedy Krieger does is what we do. Education, research, service. It's us. And so that opens up incredible opportunities to partner in all of these things, I hope, Dr. Schlager. The training of educators and clinicians, discovery that illuminates neurological and developmental disorders, engagement with families who care for children and young adults with special needs. This is so much more than a lease. It's a meeting of our missions in a way that I think will be very powerful, not just for Southern Maryland, but for the education, science, and service that animate everything that we do. Full disclosure, during my years as a faculty member at Hopkins, I had the extreme pleasure of addressing those missions across the street at the Kennedy Krieger Institute. So Regent Atman is right. This has special meaning for me. This is a great thing that's happened. And it's a great pleasure to ask Dr. Nancy Grasmick to say a few words. As you know, I've alluded to the fact that she's my good friend. She's an esteemed colleague and a legend in Maryland education. And she is the board chair of Kennedy Krieger.
Well, good morning. Chancellor Furman, Chair Gooden, members of the Board of Regents. I am excited to be here today. As many of you know, and certainly Chancellor Furman alluded to this, I was the state superintendent of schools in Maryland for 20 years. And I visited Southern Maryland on many occasions. And during those visits, it was often articulated by parents, by teachers, by administrators, that there were children whose needs were not being met. And they were not being met because school systems weren't trying. They weren't being met because there was not the expertise in terms of the environment for those students that would allow their needs to be met. And so you can only imagine after almost 30 years how excited I am today. And thank you, Regent Atman, for your kind remarks. Kennedy Krieger is a very special place, and I honor the chair of the board. What we can offer through what you have done today, I feel just enormous gratitude, is we can offer these students, their families, an educational program second to none, where we can feel a sense of optimism about the future for these students that we often cannot feel today. I want to thank the superintendents who all read letters of support for us to be in Southern Maryland, to be able to dream about having this facility. I also want to thank Senator Bailey, and more will be said about that, but he was the engine in so many ways that drove this. And in his absence, I want to thank Congressman Pointer, because not only has he been enthusiastic about this, he's also put money into the federal budget to assist us. And so I've been in contact with him and have personally thanked him for that. These students will receive an outstanding education. Any of the research necessary to benefit of the incredible research program at Kennedy Krieger will be available to these students and to their families. This will truly be life-changing for these communities where students will come to this facility. So I am indebted to all of you for being so supportive to this piece today, and such positive implications for our students and for their families. This time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bradley Schlager. Dr. Schlager comes to us from St. Louis, actually. He's been here 4 years and has just made a remarkable difference in the acceleration of all that Kennedy Krieger has to offer, both as an educational facility, a medical facility, a research facility, etc. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Bradley Schlager.
Thank you, Nancy, and good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for hosting us this morning. As you heard, I have the privilege of being the president and CEO of Kennedy Krieger Institute, and on behalf of all my colleagues from Kennedy Krieger, it's a combination of gratitude, excitement, and pride that we're able to bring soon our expertise in child development and special education to Southern Maryland. And I have to say, Jeff, the way you framed the opportunity in front of us, precisely how we. So this opportunity for this partnership is also very exciting. As you may know, and heard that Kennedy Krieger has 4 schools right now. We serve publicly funded students who, because of complex medical, psychiatric, behavioral challenges along with intellectual disability, are referred to our schools by local educational agencies. Publicly funded students, not tuition paying. We are, in effect, an extension of Maryland's public school system. And so one day, just about 4 years ago, shortly after my family and I moved from St. Louis to Baltimore, for this position, I was outside of our K-8 school, Paramount School in Baltimore City, and watching with amazement as dozens of school buses from all over the state of Maryland were rolling in to drop off students. And some of those children had been traveling for 2 hours, up to 2 hours in each direction. And I was thinking, that's very impressive that these families are willing to do to send their children so far from home to get these services. But simultaneously, as a pediatric neurologist, as a parent, as the son of a school teacher turned principal, I knew this was a problem that had to be addressed. The idea of being on a bus for that long, 5 days a week, 11 months a year, for students, for their families, I could easily imagine families opting out because of the onerous nature of the travel, and therefore not having the best opportunity and access to the least restrictive environment available for their students. So we began to discuss internally how could we extend our footprint to bring our educational clinically related services to more Maryland students We want our schools to meet students and families where they are. And then just before the pandemic, I got a message from Senator Bailey's office that he had called and he had received a copy of one of our magazines that we sent to every member of the General Assembly. It's all about what we're doing. And there's a letter from the embedded in it. And that issue had a story about one of our school students. And the letter basically made the point that we want all of our General Assembly members and all of you to think of us as a resource for the entire state of Maryland. Yes, we're centered in Baltimore. We serve the entire state and the region. And so that message came to you loud and clear because Senator Bailey said, I want a Kennedy Krieger school in my district aware of all the students who are either traveling long distances or opting out. I said, yeah, let's do that. A bunch of other things happened in the meantime, but that's effectively how we got to where we are. So thank you, Senator Bailey, for being such a determined and committed partner and advocate for helping bring the state to fruition. We believe in Kennedy Krieger and in the vision of what's possible for students from St. Mary's, Calvin, Charles, and Prince George's counties and beyond. We're part of the capital. From the state, it's really been a wonderful experience working with you and your staff on this support. I think a lot of other thanks to go around as well. So our University of Maryland Southern Campus partners, Chancellor Furman and his staff, all of you, Board of Regents, Dr. Abel, thank you. And the countless staff who worked with us in securing really this ideal location to serve their and our students in Southern Maryland. And as Nancy said, the school superintendents who supported us with their letters as well. Representative Hoyer, Mr. Hoyer has been a major source of advocacy and support for securing congressional project funding for the school. So very appreciative there, but it's imperative to acknowledge someone whose name is synonymous with excellence in education here in Maryland, especially for children with learning and developmental differences. And that's our incomparable, brilliant, passionate, and indefatigable board chair, Dr. Nancy Grasmick. Thank you, Nancy, for your unwavering support of and advocacy for our patients, students, and their families, and all of our staff. So with today's building decision, we're embarking on a new journey together with all of you to help children and teens who reside in Southern Maryland pursue all that's possible in their lives. We are committed to help each student thrive, build a life filled with wide possibilities. We are excited to transform this wonderful facility into a new school home for many Maryland children that are in need. And we hope to see all of you at the ribbon cutting sometime about a year from now. So thank you, and I'd like to hand things over now to Senator Jackie.
Good morning. Welcome to St. Mary's County, right? Mother County of Maryland. And some of you know me, sometimes last night I got the opportunity to meet some people, and one of the first times that I ever got into politics about 4 years ago, so a lot of this is new. One thing I learned, I want to tell you how grateful I am for your vote this morning. And I always found out in the last 4 years, it's always the meeting before the meeting that matters. So I'm sure you were pretty aware. Very proud to be here today in this state of the art facility that we have. This building is such an accomplishment for the University System of Maryland and gives opportunities to our community that have never existed before. And for that, I say thank you for staying the course with us. 4 years ago, when I was first elected to the Senate, a constituent that walked into my office was the parent of a child with special needs. They went to Kennedy Krieger every day. But he had a very significant challenge to make, a very significant decision to make, because the opportunity in education that only Kennedy Krieger offered was over 2 hours away. And it meant that his child was on the bus going from their house for 12 to 13 hours each day. And it was negatively affecting the life of that child and his entire family. So he was like, you know, I'm gonna have to give up my job. He had a very significant job at a nuclear power plant. And he said, I've got to give up my job and I've got to move. And I've got to move up to Baltimore County so that I can take care of my child. And I heard this not only from this parent, from others who had similar stories. And I thought, this option for these families to give their children the quality education that they deserve required such a burden on them. I was like, that's just not fair. This led many families making a difficult decision, but understandable, to put their child in a local public school system rather than in programs designed to fit their own child's specific needs. I believe that no parent should have to make that choice, no matter where they live in Maryland. The new Southern Maryland campus of Kennedy Krieger will allow families and their children to receive this service that they require right here at home. For my first meeting in my Annapolis office with Kennedy Krieger, as a result of that first letter that Dr. Brad just spoke about, we worked to advance this important project. This would only be possible with the support of so many people. And I'd like to recognize some of them. And this was not just from our region, but this was from people around the state. I'd like to recognize President Dr. Bradley Schlager, the entire leadership team of Kennedy Krieger, especially Emily Arnest. She worked with my chief of staff, Christina, and they literally have become best friends because they talk every day since January of 2020, when we started this process. The people who support this concept work to make it a reality. People, Delegate Rachel Jones, St. Mary's County Public School Superintendent Dr. Smith, who, when I talked to him about it, he rallied all the other superintendents, and they all were supportive and wrote letters. The Southern Maryland County Commissioners, the commissioners here in St. Mary's got the support, Calvert and Charles County. They all were supportive. The entire Southern Maryland delegation and the leadership of the General Assembly, particularly Senate President Bill Ferguson and Capital Budget Subcommittee Chair Senator Craig Zucker. I appreciate the guidance from John Bohannon, significant support of Congressman Steny Hoyer, and of course, Dr. Nancy Brett. I thank all of them for their support and assistance during this process, and I'm sure that I've forgotten some other people. I'm sorry about that. As well as you, the Regents, University of Maryland, and Southern Maryland for their partnership. This significant accomplishment is another example of the good that we can do when we work together, and it happens for all regions of the state. This is something that comes big to us here in Southern Maryland. It's been a great honor to help lead this effort and to ensure that our students with special needs can receive the services they deserve and the best possible educational support right here at home. As the news of this project grows, and I will just say that your funds will probably ring like mine have in the last couple of weeks. My colleagues from around the state, whether they're worried about winning their elections or not, started calling, especially the ones in rural areas, and they said, how can we get this for our area, for our children, for our students, right? Big deal. So, thank you all very much for being here today. It's a great day for all of us in Southern Maryland. Appreciate it. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Rodney.
Senator, thank you so much. You all have heard from me this morning. I tried not to be too excited when I was doing my presentation earlier about KKI in advance of the vote, even though we anticipated it. We thank you so much for your support. So I stand up here right now with enormous joy and gratitude and more relief than you can know. George, am I right? A lot of people have laid the foundation for this, and I can't tell you, the cliche that keeps coming to my mind is that it takes a village. Right, what you heard this morning is the village is coming here to raise the child, right? And how essential that is for Maryland, and particularly for the Southern Maryland community. I do also want to particularly thank the chancellor for being giddy about this opportunity from the very beginning. When I emailed him and Senior Vice Chancellor Ellen Herbst about the possibility of bringing Kennedy Krieger to USMSM after people had laid the groundwork about coming to Southern Maryland, he said, "Oh my goodness, yes, go for it." And so here we are today. It's a great opportunity in Southern Maryland. It's a great opportunity for students that we serve down here. And I can't wait to welcome Krieger here officially, and I can't wait to see what's next. Just as a final note, I mentioned earlier that Dr. Marissa Godsey, who is embedding the research opportunities in the Matrix Lab here, is also the founder of the Brain and Behavior Institute at the University of Maryland, and he's excited about the possibility of the research and collaboration opportunities that the Chancellor mentioned. And I've also spoken with Provost King from College Park about bringing the special profound and severe disabilities program down here. Again, graduate students will have the opportunity to provide internships and collaborative research efforts. So again, thank you for everybody. And I'm going to give the mic back to Chair Grasnick or Chair Gooden. Thank you everybody for coming to Grace Children.
Nancy said she would certainly do it if we asked. I want to thank Kennedy Krieger for making the USM a part of his work and for expanding services to Southern Maryland. Dr. Abel, thank you for a wonderful. It's great. And so, this is good advice. The next order of business is a consent decision. Well, it's a good device, but it's on the wrong side. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you all enjoy the smart bill. I look forward to the continued expansion of the programs and offerings that we have. As we adjourn, I ask those not participating in the flood expeditiously. So that we need to close that. Regent, please feel free to grab in the hallway and the open meeting act. That's probably outlined there. Carry out. The Board of Regents will now vote. The agenda for the public the citation of the legal authority reasons. Another of the problems. The statement has been provided with a reason. Is posted on the board. May I have a motion to close? Second. All in favor? Aye. The meeting is closed.
There are grab and go lunch to come here. We'll just also grab and stay.